Greetings, GSE alumni, faculty, students, and staff. Thank you so much for joining us to recognize the remarkable achievements of three exceptional GSE education leaders. I'm Rebecca Padnos Altamirano, and I'm a proud 2001 STEP grad. I'm also the chair of the GSE's Alumni Awards and Nominating Committee, and I have the honor of working with an incredibly talented and devoted group of GSE alumni and faculty who have the challenging yet deeply rewarding responsibility of reviewing the very impressive nominations. Many of you know that after 20 years of living right next door to Stanford University, my husband and 4 children made a pandemic move to Southwest Michigan, a completely different world from Silicon Valley. There is so much pain in our broken world right now, and I thought it might be nice to share a hopeful story from the Midwest about a remarkable transformation that one school made to manage the mental health crisis and learning loss from the global pandemic. But first, let me give you some background. This school that I'm going to tell you about was the lowest performing school in its district. No one wanted to teach there. Indeed, the teacher turnover rate was over 50%, and enrollment was declining at an alarming rate. Administrators were desperate, and the school faced closing. In a last-ditch effort, they contacted the Outdoor Discovery Center, also known as the ODC. The mission of this community-based organization is to advance outdoor education and conservation. First off, the ODC installed an ambassador on site to work with teachers on curriculum development and implementation. Students and teachers had just one daily outside activity, such as journaling under a tree or going on a walk, and one weekly off-campus activity. After just 1 year, the school had a complete turnaround. They had a 57% reduction in referrals for negative behavior. Body mass index overall decreased, with some students losing as much as 30 pounds. 77% of students achieved proficiency in reading. This was 20% higher than peers from other schools. Enrollment increased, attendance increased, including after school and summer school programs, and there was an increased rate of overall well-being and job satisfaction. This school, perhaps unexpectedly, is now the top performing school in its district. Who knew that the answer to so many complicated issues was so simple? Just go outside. What a turnaround indeed. And if this can happen through the long, cold Michigan winters, I think it could happen everywhere. And now, it's with great pride I introduce you to Dean Dan Schwartz. Dan is the I. James Quillen Dean of the Stanford Graduate School of Education and the Nomolini and Olivier Professor of Educational Technology. Dan studies student understanding and representation, and he is a leading expert in the ways that technology can facilitate learning. His work is grounded in practice from his career as a teacher. He's a world-class researcher whose scholarly work is cited over 1,000 times a year. He is highly respected by his GSE and Stanford faculty who view him as a leader with deep integrity and compassion. Please join me in welcoming Dean Dan Schwartz.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. That was very nice. And thank you for flying in from Michigan. I know it's probably better there right now, leaves turning, yeah. Good evening and welcome everyone. This is our 9th annual celebration of the Alumni Excellence in Education Award. Marciano, Sujin, and Joi, congratulations. We are extremely proud to share in your excellence. Your work manifests our vision that all learners are prepared to thrive in a dynamic future. So just for a moment, they're going to get a lot of applause. Let's have a warm-up applause for them. So I say this every year, and I'm going to say it again. This is my favorite GSE event by far. And so I can't thank the alumni enough for dreaming up the idea, executing the idea, and maintaining it. It's really it's a great thing. So thank you. It will be a superb event, and I'm grateful that you're all here. So just for a moment, I'd like to slip back into my professor role, and I'd like to put a question to you, because that's what professors do. And like a professor, I'm going to talk a lot before I get to the question. Okay. So in education, there's a strong tendency to want to justify decisions for instrumental outcomes. Will this method of teaching increase access to college? Will this policy improve national competitiveness? I think these are important considerations, but sometimes they're misplaced. So for example, do we really need to justify an arts program because it'll increase science scores? But you hear that. Can it just be its own? Sometimes there are opportunities that are simply good for the spirit right then and there. And this is one of those events, right? As you'll see, this event in celebration of our superb alumni will be one of the warmest spirit-raising events that you'll go to. There's no instrumental outcome except for that. So that's why this is one of my favorite events of the year. So here's the question to you, and I don't want the answer now. I want it at the end. Why is this event so special? Where everyone is happy and proud for everyone else. I've tried to think of equivalents. Are there other events that might be like this, like a wedding? You know, a wedding's a great moment of affirmation and significance. They're tears of joy. We'll see some tears tonight. Except in my experience, the audience for a wedding is really waiting for the reception more than the event. So it didn't work. First day of school, it has speeches and holds a sense of promise, but it's not particularly warm the first day of school because I think people are forward thinking and they're worried about what'll happen next. I tried graduation. Graduation seems like kind of the same thing, speeches. We honor accomplishments. Sometimes people cry, but it's still not as warm. And I think that's because graduation, at least from graduate school, has a strong sense of relief that you made it. It's finally, right? So more than warm. So what makes this event so special? That's your question. And so as you learn more about our three wonderful alumni, I hope you'll feel it in the room and even on Zoom, that everybody here is deeply proud, and not just of their own, but of everyone else as well. Okay, so enjoy it. Now to our awardees, these three scholars and teachers exemplify the best of the Stanford Graduate School of Education. They're leaders, they've inspired others, they discovered new knowledge and new ways of doing things. They're driving change in their communities and in the world. To give some context, we have 14,000 alumni that are eligible for this award. And I am sure that each of them has made an important contribution to education. And our alumni created this award to honor this general excellence by picking out particularly amazing people within that group. So how does the award work? It's a lot of work. It's a year-long effort. So it starts in January with nominations. And then there's a vigorous review of each nomination packet by 3 alumni, 3 faculty members, and then finally myself throughout the spring. The announcement is in the summer, and then it culminates in this moment in the fall. It's thoughtful, it's rigorous, and it's elevated 31 of our most inspiring education leaders since 2015. So interestingly, all of this year's honorees are from California. And California is a nice place to live, so don't hold it against them. Their work goes beyond the region, of course. They're touching lives of students both locally and beyond. And their students are beneficiaries of their dedication to creating opportunities for learners everywhere. So tonight, we're honoring a teacher who continues to elevate students in alternative learning environments, bringing his generous spirit to the community he serves and supporting those who are striving to improve their lives through education. We are also honoring a very bold social justice leader who, from what I understand, started in high school and is making a tremendous impact on equity and access to education and leading education policy change in the state of California. And finally, we have the privilege of honoring an alum who has elevated equity in STEM education for underprivileged students. She's also the first woman and person of color to be named the Dean non-interim of UC Riverside School of Education. Great job. Dean's great job. It's good, it's good. I'm also delighted to welcome some of our past honorees, Pia, David, and Madi, sorry. Please stand for just a moment. Okay. Yeah. Jeff. And Jeff, I didn't see you. Thank you, Jeff. So among the foundational GSE values are rigor, relevance, and daring. And this runs through the faculty work completely. Needless to say, we also try to work on the most important challenges and opportunities in education. I could say the same about our honorees. Each of these extraordinary people is tackling some of the greatest challenges in education. They're leading the way to create more equal educational opportunities, and they're helping to improve lives through learning. So now let me move on to some thank yous very quickly. I mentioned this award is created by our alumni to honor the excellence in their community. This is a daunting task. Like I said, there's 14,000 alumni. And so not all members of the Alumni Awards nominating committee could be here with us tonight. So I hope you'll look at the program to see the acknowledgement. For those members who are here tonight, can I ask you to stand? Rebecca Mulani, who's my favorite name. Let's see, Luke, Brooke, and Norm. Norm, who started it all. All right, thank you. So these alums have demonstrated their commitment to both the GSE and education, and through their work, we're able to confer these awards tonight. So thank you again. We also have to be grateful to our faculty advisors who worked on the committee: Janet Carlson, Shelley Goldman, Ann Jakewith, Ira Litt, Christopher Thomas, and John Belinsky. Don't stand, but thank you. And another thank you goes to Angela and David Philo and the Skyline Foundation, who have championed this award from the beginning. Their commitment to educators, especially those working with underserved students, is an example that should inspire all of us. So now let me move to my true role here this evening. It is an unusual role. I get to introduce the introducers who introduce the honoree. Okay. And by the way, our introducers are incredible as well. The first one is Rachel Lotan. So as a GSE alumna and professor emerita, Rachel is a GSE legend and a luminary. She helped guide the Stanford Teacher Education Program, most of us know it as STEP, to unprecedented levels of national and international recognition and respect. For generations of GSE teacher practitioners, she's the reason they love teaching, the reason they continuously strive for excellence, and the reason they are so much more likely than their peers to stay in the classroom and thrive. And by the way, despite being retired, Rachel likes to drop off food for me when she passes by my office. So Rachel is the mother bear. So Rachel has known our first honoree, Marciano Gutierrez, since 2005, when he entered STEP as a graduate student and a teacher candidate. I've heard Rachel talk about Marciano the same way I describe Rachel: someone who is honest, ethical, passionate, considerate, indefatigable, and deeply committed to his students and colleagues. Someone who embodies the best and most significant qualities of the teaching profession. Thank you, Rachel. Come on.
It's okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm honored and pleased to introduce Marciano Gutierrez. Among his many, many qualified and accomplished peers in the program, Marciano stood out in his intellectual engagement, a commitment to learning the craft of teaching, his diligence, thoughtfulness, and the depth of his work. Because of his extraordinary accomplishments as a student teacher, and because of his outstanding performance as a teacher candidate in STEP, Marciano served as a mentor teacher for new teacher candidates during his first summer after graduating. An exceptional situation. And subsequently, several summers after, except once when he was unable to serve, as well as a cooperating mentor teacher for years to come. Nancy Lobel, who's somewhere here, wrote in her letter of recommendation, and I quote, as the coordinator of the STEP annual summer program, thank you, Nancy, I had the pleasure of working with Marciano when he was a mentor teacher for a group of STEP teacher candidates, while simultaneously giving middle school youngsters an outstanding summer experience. Marciano was one of our teacher leaders for many years, helping Stanford to grow a new crop of teachers. Indeed, Marciano was a valuable citizen of STEP class and at Alta Vista, the continuation school where he taught for 13 years. Currently, he continues to demonstrate a professional stance and outstanding performance in his position at the Anza Community College Middle College program in Cupertino. Bill Pierce, is he here? Oh, thank you, Bill. Bill Pierce, the Alta Vista principal, wrote, he ranks among the top 1% of all educators I had the privilege to work with over my 36-year career. Alicia, I'm told you're here, Alicia. Where are you? A STEP graduate as well, and Marciano's colleague, both at Alta Vista and now at the college. She wrote, as a teacher, Marciano represents the values of the GSE very well, in that he has created outstanding educational experiences for some of the most high-need students. I think that was one of the most beautiful quotes I've seen, and I'm really proud of it. It's really the value of the GSE. In addition to teaching, Marciano has been active in various professional organizations in Fresno, his hometown, local in the greater Bay Area, and at the state level. He has received numerous awards, including from the White House Initiative on Hispanic Education, a Fulbright Fellowship to China. I could go on, but I know I only have whatever number of minutes. In 2012-2013, Marciano was selected as a Teaching Ambassador Fellow in Washington, D.C., first from a continuation school. He advised Secretary Duncan and his senior staff, and boy, did they need advisement. As Wendy Dowling, a colleague, is she here? Yes. Thank you, Wendy. So good to meet you in person, wrote, Marciano has time and again tirelessly put himself in a position to influence public policy at every level, from the local district teacher association all the way to the United States Department of Education. At the end of the one-year position, Secretary Duncan asked Marciano to stay on as his personal advisor. After serious consideration of this exceptional offer, and contrary to my advice, first and last time, Marciano decided to come home to his students at Alta Vista because they needed him. That's a quote from him. I understood that he did so because this is what and how his students think and feel about him. And I quote, we were taught that our voice matters, and so do we. We got to have opinions, thoughts, and feelings that were all valued and heard. Brilliant teaching aside, what stands out the most to me about G, which is how they called you, right? is his deep level of concern, care, and advocacy for his students. I have never had another teacher that was so invested in my educational and personal success. All students knew that G yearned for them to succeed and that he would do whatever it took to help them reach their goals. Parents wrote similar things about the teacher. And there are several media mentions, interview. My favorite one was with Michael Krasny from Forum. I am aware that I'm supposed to focus on Marciano Gutierrez's professional accomplishments and conduct. However, I think I would be remiss if I didn't make note of Marciano's character and more personal characteristics. As a STEP teacher candidate and upon graduation, not only did Marciano support his ailing parent both financially and emotionally, he donated a kidney to one of his close relatives whose health was deteriorating and who was in a life-threatening situation. The one summer he couldn't serve as a mentor teacher. Marciano's generous spirit, caring approach to others, his giving personality permeates his personal and professional interactions. I will end with an anecdote. So asked by a staff member of Secretary Duncan's office for a recommendation, I sang Marciano's praises, much longer than 3 minutes. The person's last question to me was, is this guy for real? Well, he is. And he embodies the best and the most significant qualities of the teaching profession and is worthy of our recognition and gratitude. Thank you, Marciano.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to get into the speech so that I don't cry because you almost got me. You're very, very close. So recently, I turned 40 years old. And although I am now a middle-aged man, I constantly think of myself at age 7. I've read enough coming to age stories to know that young epiphanies tend to happen in their teen years or near them. But for me, it was 7. It was at this age that I began to notice some of the ways that my mother navigated the world. I eventually came to understand that my mother was a person who could not read. She was functionally illiterate and relied on street smarts and gimmicks to be able to navigate a world of documents and paper. For example, when handed something to read and sign, she would often inform the agent that she left her reading glasses at home and then would ask if they could read it to her. My mom didn't wear reading glasses then. My mother's academic journey was foundational to my experience as a student and now as a teacher. And although she didn't always exactly know how, my mother did her best to advocate for me in my education. And for that, I'm grateful. And I miss her every single day. Starting with my mother, there have been a number of individuals, all women, who have played a determinative outsized role in my life. As I said before, 7 was that pivotal age for me, but not only because what I noticed, but because of who noticed me. God, serendipity, chance, you take your pick, but they all seemed to smile on me during that year because it was at that time when I met Nadine Takeuchi. Mrs. Takeuchi, or Mrs. T, was my 2nd grade teacher. And just to give you some background, in my house, we had no books except for one King James Bible that sat in the closet. That's my sister laughing. That sat in the closet, whose words were inaccessible to every single person who lived in that house. Instead, words were something that we received in the mail. Something from government offices or bill collectors. But it was in Mrs. T's class when I learned that words could bring joy, stories could be vibrant, and take you to places outside that which was familiar and maybe even a bit daunting. It was in her class that I learned the lessons of Lon Popo, the quiet companionship of Frog and Toad, and the determination of Abby who kept the lights burning. It was in Mrs. T's class that I learned that words can inspire and not just direct, that words can be fantastic in all meanings of the term, and that words in a book could empower in ways that words in an envelope could not. For the rest of my life, I would remember the community and the excitement that came with little carpet squares, arranged in a circle, waiting to hear about Hecate Peg and the 7 kids named after the days of the week. I have that book, Miss T. I have struggled my whole life with reading, but in Miss T's class, none of that mattered. Miss T became my advocate throughout my elementary school years and beyond. She was there at my high school, my 6th grade promotion speech, my high school graduation speech, my Dean's Medal presentation in college, and she is here tonight. Thank you. Miss T, can you stand, please? Thank you. Whereas Miss T was the first bookend in my educational journey, Rachel Lotan was the second. When I think of all that Stanford has given me, all that it has taught me, it is personified in her. For students in the Stanford Teacher Education Program, Rachel was their grandmother, whether they wanted her to be or not. She fed them when they were hungry and sometimes even when they were full. You're not the only one, Dan. She hugged them when they were down, encouraged them when they were tired, and helped them do what was right, even when they wanted to do what was easy. And I'm speaking about myself there. Rachel was an example of what teachers should be to their students. Someone who was passionate and expert about their subject matter. Someone who inspired by example and kindness, but also someone who held students to high expectations and who helped them along the way. Rachel was there when I needed her the most, and she's been there ever since. So Jefita, thank you. I will never forget my experience in the Stanford Teacher Education Program. When Dan said earlier that graduation is a sense of relief, it was. It was. To succeed in STEP, one must work at an astonishing pace and at a level of intensity that in almost any other circumstance would bring people to their knees. The term waiting to exhale was never more true for me than during my year at STEP. The experience was intense, but it was so worth it. I am the teacher I am today because of it. There is a reason why there is such a large discrepancy between the retention rate of STEP teachers and those who went through other avenues of teacher prep. You know these numbers. On average, 50% of teachers leave the profession in the first 5 years. However, the retention rate of STEP alum are much different. 80% of STEP teachers are still in the profession 5 years out from their graduation, and that is not by accident. I've been teaching for almost 20 years now, and I owe this longevity to the lessons I've learned in this building. I am so grateful for those lessons that have allowed me to teach students of promise across the academic spectrum. I've spent my entire career working in alternative education, working with students who have not been served by the traditional settings. There are a number of reasons why students end up in my classroom. Sometimes it's due to academic skill deficiencies. Sometimes it's because they're searching for a sense of community. And I thank Ms. T, I thank Rachel, and I thank this school for helping me connect with them. Finally, I would like to thank my wife, to whom I owe so much. We met when I was 12, when we were 12. I was running for student council and I wanted her vote, so I introduced myself to her. See, I've been involved in policy for a long time. She has been teaching me things ever since. She is my comfort, she's my happiness all wrapped into one. She is that which centers my life and reminds me of all that is good. The year that I did STEP was the first year of our marriage. We were married in late May and moved to on-campus housing 2 weeks later. 2 years ago, she gave me my greatest gift, my son Marlo. I hope to take all of the lessons that I have learned at this school and by my mentors, and to make sure that I continue to give those lessons and that love to every kid that's in front of me. I am deeply grateful and humbled for this award. I thank the School of Education. I thank the committee, and congratulations to Sujin and Joy. It is an honor to be in your company. I accept this award in honor of my kids, my students, my teachers, and every teacher who cares about those kids who are in front of them. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
So Rachel, I think the apprentice just graciously passed the master. It's very sweet. It's my pleasure to introduce Mike Kirst, who is fabulous. If you have never met him, never heard of him, he's amazing. So Mike was okay, just checking, because you never seem to retire, is a 4-term president of the California State Board of Education. To give you some sense of what that means, this is the governing body of K-12 students. I believe that's 6 million children, 300,000 teachers, and 10,000 schools. So what you may not know is that Mike is the hardest working retired person you'll ever meet. He's nodding, not just in Sacramento, but here at the GSE as well. So Mike has helped inspire an entire generation of education leaders in public service. He was a faculty member here. He was the head of everything. And so leaders who've taken their GSE experience working with Mike have brought it to incredible scale. And so Dr. Jin Jez is no exception. So Mike, I believe you were her dissertation advisor. Please do, tell us.
Well, it is my pleasure to talk about Jin and to introduce her to you. She is a most unusual educator. I do not think anybody quite like her has ever gotten this award. And the field she works in is one that's not well known and understood. So I'll get to that, but to start at the beginning, she is a first-time person from her family going on to higher education. She went on to the University of California at Berkeley, and then on to get her PhD at Stanford. And right from the start, she was looking at her experience and at her thoughts about how to improve people in higher education. And her understanding and insight was that when we look at problems that students have with financial aid, they always talk about income and the family income and things like that. Jin's idea was to look at the wealth of the family. That, you can have income, but you can have debts. Various families have nothing behind their salaries and therefore are in trouble. And so she really pioneered in the field that we should rethink financial aid around family wealth and not around income. And she published papers based on that dissertation, which I had the pleasure of supervising. She then went on to be the professor of public policy at Sacramento State University, where she trained people who often went into government and nonprofit and city government agencies. And that was I think, a very successful and rewarding part of it. While she was there, she was the director of the California State University Student Success Network. The California State University has improved greatly, but when she was working on student success, only about 55% of their students completed within 6 years. So there was a lot to do on student success. And she really was a pioneer in that as well, and rethinking that. So after that, I thought, I was advising her, oh, you got a tenured professorship, you got to stay there. And she calls me up and says, I got this offer from something called California Competes, California Competes Higher Education and an Improved Economy. And I said, oh boy, this is one of those nonprofits. It's not sure how you fund it. Don't leave it, tenured professors, you do it for 3 years and then come back if they'll let you. But she says, no, I'm going to do this all the way. So then she honors a field that is really one that is in a sort of a dark continent. It's called adult education. Sometimes it's called working learners, but of course, not all adults are work. Mostly it's people over 25. They are in the group of 2/3 of Americans who have not completed 4 years of education. And they are now struggling out there. So these are students and people who their job is boring. They're not getting anywhere. They're not making enough money. They're automated out of their job. We can think of AI and what that's going to be doing. And they're thinking, where do I go in this education, quote, non-system, fragmented world to improve myself? It's not real clear. The community colleges, for all they do, don't have a lot of quick vocational programs. They were slow to get online in some in ways. So her job is to create a system out of a non-system, glue the pieces of federal and state government grants and then the various offerings of the educational institutions, and create pathways for these people. Where do I go? How do I finish? How do I get a skill? How do I lead to something that's the next skill? These are really different kinds of students, and there's a lot of them out there in our changing economy. And of course, with California, with a rapid change and layoffs and so on, it's badly needed. While she was at Sacramento State, she was one of the few people in America who studied for-profit higher education. Boy, that's a sector. I mean, I used to teach a business school course, and I taught some things about it. And these poor students, I would get them. They would call up a for-profit institution, and these recruiters were calling them in the morning, at night. I mean, they were. So she understood that, tracked that. But she now put together 18 grants. So she orchestrates 18 grants that she's gotten into this system. And the themes are around really how to organize federal and state programs so that they cohere to each other, but more broadly, education and workforce alignment through integrated post-secondary strategies. So that, and she guides the state, and California Competes is one of the leading things in helping the state think through this. The state is wallowing around in this. Believe me, I was up there, and they don't really have it figured out very well. We have a master plan that was done in 1960. It does not mention adult education. So she helps with state policy. Her most recent work is called Transforming Online Education in California. Obviously, that's a huge factor here. And finally, she's a member of Governor Newsom's working group on the cradle to career pathway to put together not just a pathway, but a whole new data system that connects the careers more clearly to education. So it's my pleasure to have done this, and thank you.
Okay, well, that introduction, wow. Thank you so much, Mike, for that. Thank you to the Stanford Graduate School of Education for this tremendous recognition. I am incredibly grateful to be one of the recipients of the Alumni Excellence in Education Award, and to be in the company of such distinguished faculty, staff, leaders, rising leaders, all the supporters that make this happen, because Lord knows that being able to do this kind of work requires phenomenal support. And I was told I could thank one or two people that I'm up here, so I will do that. I specifically want to thank my mentors, obviously Mike Kirst, Anthony Antonio, who's in here, they're over there, my other advisor, Cynthia Schrager, my mentor, who really encouraged me to take leadership positions, along with important Stanford faculty who mentored me, Linda Darling Hammond, then Susanna Loeb, Richard Banks in the law school, my undergrad advisor, Jerome Karabal, and the California Competes Board of Directors, who really encouraged me to trust my gut. And number two, my second thank you, my family and friends that are here, of course, my dad, my brother, my mom in spirit, of course, my husband, my two boys, William and Alexander, Judith, Sherelle, Angela, hang in, and the rest of my Stanford posse of classmates who made this not only fun, but just really rewarding to go through the program. I want to step back though. As Mike told me when I first met him, Stanford trains researchers, and those researchers can shape how we see the world and what actions we take. One key thing that we know from research is that education can be transformative, not just for the individual, but also for the lives of their families, their communities, creating ripple effects for society as a whole. And it certainly created a lasting impact in my life. My time at Stanford was instrumental in shaping my path, the rigorous training, the opportunity to work alongside some of the most curious and hardest working people out there, and the holistic support that allowed me to really focus my energy on my development as a scholar. I was given the space to learn, to think, to grow the skills and knowledge that I now harness in my role as CEO of, it's crazy to say, one of California's most influential research and advocacy organizations. And beyond the academics, Stanford helped to cement many of the principles and values that I carry with me every day, serving as the cornerstone of my philosophy around leadership and reinforcing my commitment to justice and education. And I remember the moment when I was accepted to Stanford's then Stanford University School of Education, now the Graduate School of Education. I received a call from Anthony, my advisor, and I was in shock that I got into Stanford. So you could imagine my amazement when I found out that I received this award. As someone who didn't think that I would get in, to now be recognized among the field of Stanford alumni who, is not a group of slackers. This award is so meaningful to me. And I will say that, as a policy analyst, we're trained to step one, literally, right? What's the problem? So even when we have wins, we're already thinking about what's the next problem because the road is long. So I particularly appreciate this recognition because it made me pause and not think about the next problem and recognize the impact of the work that I've been able to lead. So thank you for that. I know there's current students here tonight, and they asked, if there were thoughts for students to share some. And so I wanted to share one thing that I wish I had known back then. And that's what made me different, what made me an outlier, unexpected, is what also gives me power. I'm a first generation college graduate, following the footsteps of my big brother, who was so helpful in paving the way as we navigated how one goes to college, which is so complicated, even as traditional students on the traditional path, right? And right now I focus on, as Mike mentioned, the adult learner for whom there is no real path. As a woman of color, as the daughter of an immigrant who didn't speak English coming to the US and had me on her back as she worked the fields, I initially viewed these things as shortcomings, not as strengths. They were challenges that I had to overcome, not assets that would drive my success. And today I know that it's this fusion of my lived experiences and education that empowers me to be truly effective in my work. I have a deep understanding of the inequities that too many Californians face, and I lead with empathy and passion because I know what it's like to need help and not get it. I know that for those of us, the students too, that are in the room, your power lies within who you are as individuals and the unique personal experiences that have shaped you. Trust your intuition, stay true to your values, your passions, your convictions. You're a part of the Stanford community, among the elite. You have access few people have, and literally no one has the same combination of education, training, and lived experience as you do. You're the sole expert in that domain. It's you and your entirety, your unique blend of passions, experiences, and values that will empower you to create the change you want to see in the world. Be bold, go for the things that are right, that drive you, no matter how big of a mountain you have to climb. As I stand here today, I'm reminded of a powerful quote by the great American writer, James Baldwin. He said, "I am what time, circumstance, history have made of me, certainly, but I'm also much more than that. So are we all." With that, I'm deeply grateful to the Stanford Graduate School of Education for its role in shaping my journey. I'm extremely honored to accept this award, and thank you for letting me share in the collective mission of creating a brighter future for Californians, for our world, through the power of education.
Wow. So Sujan, you're my new hero, heroine. I'm so proud the School of Education could have helped you forward. It's really wonderful. So next introducer is Chad Franklin. Chad is Associate Deputy Executive Director at Goddard Riverside, which is a community organization in New York City that supports families at every stage of life within a social justice framework. So Chad met Dr. Joi A.Spencer at Stanford when Joi was an undergraduate, and Chad was a graduate student at the then Coverly School of Education. Wow. They go way back. Joi was also an amazing student, just like Chad, and somehow they ended up taking a class together. It's important to recognize Joi was an undergraduate taking a graduate course, of course. And so they talked about their hometowns and quickly learned that their family started and shared a connection to Rochester, New York. And so they've maintained a friendship and working relationship on, I imagine, many boards and committees between California and New York for over 30 years. So Chad, fill in the story for us. Thank you.
Good evening. It is a wonderful pleasure and privilege to stand before you today to do something that comes very natural for me, to highlight and share on the wonderful work and accomplishments, and to introduce to you my dear, dear sister, Dr. Joi A.Spencer. So I won't take too long to do this, and not to shortchange Dr. Spencer. Her work is vast. It goes before her, and it will live for generations and generations. She is an insurgent intellectual, probably one of the kindest insurgent intellectuals you will ever meet. She's a bridge. And so the best thing that I can do is to get her up here. But before I do that, I do want to say 30 years ago in this building, Dr. Spencer and I spent so much time. Actually, to tell the truth, it is because of Dr. Spencer that I made it out of Coverly School of Education. And she was an undergraduate, and I was a poor graduate student. And I tell you, the conversations that we had were so rich and so robust, right? And just the principles. So it was amazing when I found out that her grandfather lived in Rochester. I also want to say, and I can't go into too much of this, but one of the hardest crises that I had here in my life, where I had to really, really confront myself and the things that made me up, that made me who I am. And I wasn't ready to contend with those things. And I was broken. And some type of way, Dr. Spencer found out. And I lived in Crothers Hall, right, with the law dorm. And she came over and we had communion. Like, who thinks of that? She came over to do communion with me. And so that's just to give you some insight. So I do want to tell you some of the overwhelming reasons why she's a recipient. Just a few. Dr. Spencer is the Dean of Education at UC Riverside. So you heard that earlier. That in and of itself is enough reason to give her this award. Dr. Spencer's work investigates the mathematics, the mathematics learning opportunities of African American and other minoritized youth. Her studies and research on race and inequality in schooling ask questions about the teaching and learning of mathematics and the systems that support or limit student participation and success. Her latest publishing is a co-author of an amazing, powerful book entitled Anti-Blackness at School, Creating Affirming Educational Spaces for African American Students. It was published last year by Teachers College Press. Dr. Spencer's prior work as the interim dean and professor of mathematics education in the School of Leadership and Education Science at the University of San Diego centered on educational equity in higher and K-12 education. This resulted in the launch of the doctoral program in education for social justice, the implementation of school-wide professional development on anti-racism, and the school's first diversity postdoctoral fellows program. Words that she strongly align with and resemble and resonate are purpose, commitment, joy, which is her namesake, and love. And I saw a quote the other day, and I had to adopt it and to adapt it. What I realized about Dr. Spencer is that her life and work are ultimately about love. A love of justice, of leveling, a love of people, a love of community and family. And her beautiful family is here with us tonight. And a love of knowledge, of learning and unlearning. So I want to leave her with two of my favorite quotes, which she's probably heard many times before, because she is that bridge. So in the words of Alice Walker, we acknowledge our ancestors because we're aware that we did not make ourselves, but that the line stretches all the way back to God, perhaps to God. We remember them because it is an easy thing to forget that we are not the first to suffer, to struggle, to fight, to cry, to live, to love, to laugh, and ultimately to die. The grace with which we embrace life is always a measure of those gone on before, and you resemble that. And the last quote by W.E.B. Du Bois, he quotes in the training of Black Men for Life and the Souls of Black Folk, why, if the soul can fling the dust aside and naked on the air of heaven ride, were it not a shame for him in this clay carcass crippled to abide? Why, if the soul can fling the dust aside and naked on the air of heaven ride, were it not a shame for him in this clay carcass crippled to abide? You, Dr. Spencer, are that soul. Ride.
So you see who the teacher was, right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Chad, for your words. Thank you for your love. Thank you for the years, the times, hours we sat in this building trying to get that last paper written. Stanford put us through our paces, but we made it through, and I'm so grateful. Thank you for flying, traveling here for me. There just aren't adequate words. It's funny, Stanford gave us some very specifics about this talk, exactly how many people you can thank. And it was so Stanford-esque, I said. So I want to start off by doing a little bit of what Susan said, thanking the first person, which is all my family. And when I say family, my family is all the folks I love. You. It doesn't matter who you're in my life. You're my family. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. There's just so much love for you, for the sacrifices you made for me. Thank you, Mom, and my boys, Mark and Miles, my brother, who's all sitting here. Everyone's so beautiful. Thank you for being here with me. This means so much to me. And there'll be other thank yous more as I go on. Please allow me, I'm going to read my remarks. That's not normally what I do. I'm a professor, and when you're a professor, you pontificate. And, I also grew up in the Black church where you don't ever give a mic to a preacher, and you don't ever give a mic to a professor. And you definitely don't let them go last, but here we are. So here we go. The greatest gift, undoubtedly, is the opportunity to become who we are called to be. The travesty of our historic oppression as a people is bigger than the physical punishment and the bodily confinements that we endured. It's bigger even than the laws passed that locally and globally secured and sealed our landlessness and our dehumanization. As terrible as these were, and they were terrible, these woundings paled in comparison to the cutting off of our dreams and of our purposes. Our lives are not meant to be lived in servitude to others, not only because it is morally wrong, but because it is an aberration of the project of humankind. When I am diminished, when I am destroyed and broken, you are, by our most basic universal laws, diminished, destroyed, and broken as well. My life's work, at least to this point, has been devoted to supporting our people in finding and fulfilling their purpose and becoming who they were meant and called to be. I began my professional career as a middle school mathematics teacher in East Palo Alto, California. My goal then was to provide my students with a world-class education, the kind of education typically reserved only for the children of the elite. Each month, you got paid monthly as a teacher, I would take that meager paycheck, pay my rent, pay my tithes, buy a little food, and then go spend the rest buying my students the best books, supplies, and opportunities that an urban, underfunded public school salary could provide. There were many months where I could barely afford the bus and train ride to get back and forth to work, but I didn't mind. Because when you are doing what you love, and when you are doing what you are supposed to be doing, when you are investing your life in the development of others, you will never be broke a day in your life. Our STEAM academies, run with my colleagues, Odesma Dalrymple and Dr. Perla Myers, who is right here, have educated thousands of young people and their families and teachers. Our goal is for young people and communities to see the connection between their lives and our world's most pressing challenges. Our students are learning to use mathematics, not simply to get a good job or to improve the United States industrial complex, but rather to bring greater levels of joy, greater levels of justice and fairness, wealth sharing, sustainability to our world. It has been a dream come true. In my work as dean, I get to teach teachers how to teach. Isn't that interesting? I get to teach teachers and future educators of all kinds to teach. I get to teach them how to teach. I get to teach them what to teach. But I think most importantly, I get to teach them why to teach. That being an educator is the greatest act of freedom fighting in which we can engage. Because education, true education, is liberatory. See, I come from a people who understood the liberatory power of knowledge, of literacy. From Frederick Douglass to bell hooks to every invisible and unknown enslaved or oppressed African American learning to read in the dark of the night under threat of injury or death, or going to school in a place where people did not believe you should be there, where your humanity was questioned or your ability and possibility was denied. This award is for them. It's about them. This work is about them, about our possibility. Education is liberatory because no one can be truly oppressed when they know the truth. What we know changes and shifts what we do and who we can become. This is why knowledge is hidden from the child in the ghetto. This is why people of means place their children in exclusive schools, paying exorbitant tuition and tutors and for test takers, because they understand the stakes. This is why every attempt is being made to keep us from learning our history. Because once we know who we are, we will be truly free. My life has been wrapped up in the most masterful tapestry of love. From the time I was a child, I have been sent a convoy of caretakers, pushing me on to my goals, to my destiny. This moment is for you, for all of you. No one could have had a better mother than Jin Spencer. Yes. Who never, ever gave up on me, who sacrificed everything for me to live my dream. Thank you. Is so deeply inadequate, Mom. I don't know where to begin. For every book purchased, every prayer prayed, every love shown, I am humbled in your presence. And my brother John, you have been my partner in life, a friend like no other, an encourager, a cheerleader. You are a quiet force. As a Black man, you have faced so much, but emerged with dignity, joy, and hope. You are the joy and hope of our family. I love you. Let me attempt to wrap this up. As a young person, if we missed our school bus, John and I went to school in downtown Los Angeles. If we missed our actual school bus, that was our yellow bus, we had to take the number 40 RTD public bus to school. And those from LA know what the RTD is. They called it the rough, tough, and dirty. Now, the moniker on the bus said number 40, LA County Jail. That was its final destination. In some ways, that was messaging to us as a community, as a people, about what folks saw our destination as. But I had other messaging too. Powerful messaging from my family, from my teachers, my friends, my classmates, that I was strong and powerful, that I was capable and ready. I had a great cloud of witnesses. My ancestors walking with me and walking me to and through Stanford, because a person on the number 40 bus to downtown LA County Jail doesn't just end up here. It's not accidental. My ancestors held my hands through the halls of Stanford and UCLA and South Central and the downtown business magnet high school, to South Africa, to Ghana, to Switzerland, to Singapore, through a BA and an MA and a PhD, through teaching and a faculty member and tenure and a dean. It's not about me. Thank you for walking this road with me and for allowing me to live my dreams and to become the person that I was called to be. Long live dreams, long live purpose, long live love. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So that is a fabulous family. So you can now, during the reception, you can answer my question, what makes tonight so special now that you've had a chance to see it? I hope you felt it. I did. Thank you all.